Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. Oh, let's just keep talking about guns. How about that? Welcome back. I'm Tom Gresham. It is Gun Talk. Glad that you could be here. Our number, if you want to join us, really easy, Tom Talk Gun. How's that? It's just easy as it gets. Tom, that's me. Tom Talk Gun will get you in here. And we're pretty much all over the place with subject matter. If you got a range report you want to share with us, something you've been shooting, something you've taken to the range, you've been to a class somewhere, you want to tell us about some training you've taken, or maybe it's just a cool old gun that you've got that you want to talk about. Or you know what, if you have questions, maybe you're thinking about getting into buying a gun for self-defense. Maybe you've had a gun for self-defense, but you've never decided to carry it. You just have it at home, but now you think about carrying it. And you're unsure. Well, we can help you with that. Just give us a call. Again, 866-TALK-GUN or Tom Talk Gun. We had the big story, I guess almost a month ago now, out of Indiana. Eli Dicken, 22-year-old man, stops a mass shooting in progress by shooting, which is what we always have to do, shooting the bad guy. It's always stopped when a good guy shows up with a gun. Sometimes the good guy wears a uniform. Sometimes he or she doesn't. But once a mass murderer starts, he keeps going until someone with a gun shows up. The only question is, how long do you want to wait? In this case, turns out it's about 15 seconds before Eli started shooting this guy and shot him at reportedly 40 yards. I hear 43, maybe a more official word, with what probably was a 9mm pistol. Don't have the exact details on that yet. A lot of people say, well, how could anybody make a shot at 40 yards? Well, just like going to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. But training comes into all of that, which brings us to our next guest, a friend of mine, Dave Spaulding. He is the law enforcement firearms trainer of the year several years ago, career law enforcement, SWAT guy, SWAT team leader, and all-around good guy and trainer. Dave, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom.
Absolutely. So you've been teaching, you do one of the things that I like a lot, which is you ask why. I mean, you take a lot of classes, you've given a lot of classes, but you continue to ask, why are we doing that? Is that the best way? Is there a different way? Should we try something else in our shooting technique? And it's like, okay, well, that works, but is there something else? How did you get to that mindset of looking at things that way?
I really can't put my finger on any specific thing. I believe it's because I came out of college intending to be a high school teacher and a coach. So the whole educational process, adult learning theory, all that stuff was in my head. Mm-hmm. And I had a minor in sports physiology. So I had a pretty good understanding of how the human body worked. And as time progressed and I went into SWAT and I became a firearms instructor and I saw some of the things that were being taught as a matter of course, I started to question those things like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not how the human body works best. Mm. So the concept of asking why, which is defined as for cause or reason, mm-hmm. seemed to make a ton of sense to me. And then when I started taking some classes from some well-known people, and when I would ask why, they would shut me down because, well, don't you know who I am? Well, that never sounded good enough for me.
Or that's the way we've always done it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care what unit you were in or anything. I'm getting ready to spend a lot of time, effort, money to anchor this particular skill. I should know why it benefits me.
Interesting. Of course, you're applying kinesiology to all these movements. Is this the smartest, best, fastest, most efficient, economical way of doing things?
Exactly. I mean, people throw the word efficiency out there regularly. And when you ask them what it means, they just look at you like, well, it means the least amount of time, effort, and energy expended. Mm-hmm. But most people don't get that. But efficiency is important. You should spend the least amount of time, effort, and energy expended. I'll give you an example, and this is one of the things that people kind of get upset with me about. When I clear a stoppage, I just turn the gun upside down. I grab a hold of it with my support hand like I'm grabbing a hold of a ball bat or any other implement. I pull it back. I let gravity let the cartridge fall out, let the slide go, upright the gun, rejoin my hands, and I begin to shoot. And everybody tells me that's wrong. I should be grabbing the slide in like an overhand or a saddle type grip and working it. Mm-hmm. And that never made much sense to me because gravity doesn't help you as well. But that's just kind of an example of how I think about this stuff.
All right. So we've been talking about this Eli Dicken deal. I know you've been talking about it, and I've gone out and run the drill. I've been shooting at 40 yards. I even now, heaven forbid, have started using, oh my God, a red dot sight. Dave, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
You don't have to apologize to me. I don't want to offend any of the Star Wars fans out there, but I too have gone over to the dot side.
The dot side, exactly right. Okay, so one of the things you've been teaching, let's get to the 3x5 cards, because that's one of the things you do use in your training. I mean, it's not like the essence of your training, but it's a tool, it's a thing. What do you do with these index cards?
I use it a lot, quite frankly. It's in a linear fashion. It's the same size as the heart and the aorta. And I stole it from a couple of special forces guys back in the 80s that were teaching a SWAT school I went to. They were using it in the drills that we were doing. They explained to me why they did it. Of course, an index card's ubiquitous. You can get them at any pharmacy, grocery store, and
right.
Just about any place, anywhere. And it's a really good representation of what you need to hit. So I adopted it. I've been using it ever since. No, it's not as popular as the V8 Bullseye Repair Center, but you can find them anywhere, and they're a lot cheaper.
And you use it vertically, like on the thorax, the chest, and then you use it horizontally, I guess, to describe the eye box area in the head.
Actually, no, I use a 3-inch Post-it note for that.
No kidding. Square?
Yeah.
No, I'll be darned. Okay.
I mean, think about it. You want to put it between the eye sockets, the nasal cavity, just a little bit above the eyebrow,
right.
The weaker part of the skull. I think the 3x5 sideways is actually a little too wide.
Okay, that sounds, and I know a lot of people are thinking the same thing right now. That sounds like a really small target. That sounds like something that would be really hard to hit with my handgun. Is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's that area of the head is small. You can't make it bigger just because you want it to be. I mean, if you think of the eye sockets and the nasal cavity, it's not very large.
Right.
And again, Post-it notes can be bought just about anywhere. So between 6-inch squares and 3x5 rectangles and Post-it notes, I pretty much have my target system set.
Okay, so how do, and I know you've been talking about this. People ask you about it right now, the whole Eli Dicken deal, 40 yards. Is that real? First of all, people say, well, that's not justifiable. And you go, yeah, I understand if you said self-defense, but there's something else that's going on here, which is defensive shooting that may not necessarily be self-defense where somebody's attacking you, but you are trying to stop somebody who's hurting other people. That's kind of a different thing, isn't it?
Well, when did we start discounting in defense of the life of another?
Yes.
I mean, there are innocent people out there, people that can't defend themselves. And if we are capable of doing that, when did we become so callous that we stopped?
Interesting question, because it's always been okay to go help other people. In fact, it isn't more than okay. It's good. It's commendable to help other people and maybe to save their lives. So that being said, how do you teach somebody to be able to shoot well enough to make that shot?
I back them up. We start close. We back up a little bit. We back up a little bit. We back up a little bit. In every one of the classes I taught, we shot 3x5 rectangles at 25 yards.
Wow.
But you just basically back up. You fade back. You go from 3 to 7 to 10 to 15, and you learn where to hold. What is a sight picture? It's what it looks like in order to hit the shot. Mm-hmm. So you basically just back people up, and it's really not that hard to hit, say, a 8-inch steel plate out to 50 yards. You just have to know how to hold and, of course, how to smoothly depress the trigger.
Well, I was just going to say, the other part of it is can you press the trigger without disturbing the sights, whatever your sighting system is? In other words, can you do it without making the bullet go off target? And do you find that by starting them close and backing up, they can say, okay, I'm starting to get a little sloppy here. It's actually exposing my weaknesses, and they're able to deal with that?
Of course, yeah. They can see they're getting sloppy. They'll also start getting that sight wobble, which you have to learn to accept. You can't hold the gun perfectly still. So when you get them to understand that sight wobble looks worse as the target gets smaller, that if you smoothly depress the trigger, you can still get the hit. It's a matter of them gaining confidence in their own abilities, and that's a big part of training, isn't it?
Well, it is. Dave, hold on a second here. We're talking with Dave Spaulding, firearms trainer extraordinaire. We're going to be back with him in just a second here. Quick break. More gun talk coming right back. We're talking with Dave Spaulding, firearms trainer and former law enforcement, a lot of experience out there. Dave, you taught a lot of people to shoot. Are you seeing anything different in what people either want to learn or how they approach the subject of carrying a gun for personal protection?
Yeah, I think there is what's the right word I want to use? I think there's a tendency to want to go fast. Everything's about going fast draw, fast reloads, fast splits. And I'm not convinced that those are the kind of things that are going to help you win a gunfight. We had this conversation here not too long ago, Tom. I'm a big fan of the word deliberate. It's a word that came from the Old West. Folks like Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson used it when they talked about, being involved in gunfights. And I think it's a word that we should bring back when it comes to firearm training. We should be deliberate in our actions. We should understand that it's a balance of speed and accuracy, knowing when to go fast versus when to be more accurate and all that, instead of just go fast. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, there is a tendency to want to shoot at distance because things like this Eli Dickens situation, make it to the forefront. And so people I want to, shoot at 40 yards and 50 yards. And I think there's enough situations now that we can justify some of that. But I think we should still be emphasizing relatively close quarter situations. Because of our politicians and their policies, street crime is on the rise. And those types of crimes happen at very intimate distances. So I think people are still wise when it comes to their combative pistol craft skills to be focusing on that 10 yards and in.
I mean, to the point where I try to explain it to people and say, look, because and you've done enough training, it's second nature to you. But a lot of people have never fought at all, and they don't understand. You may be trying to hold this guy off with one hand while you're trying to draw and shoot him with the other hand. That's the kind of distance we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely. Think about it. If they're going to rob you, they want that to be kind of private, kind of quiet. They're not going to shout that across the shopping mall parking lot. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to get close to you so they can keep it kind of on the down low. So those situations they're going to be, 3, 5, 7 yards and that type situation. They can't mug you, rob you, rape you, whatever, without making close contact.
Yeah, from across the room, they can't do that. It's one of the examples I give. Talk about the holding on to somebody with one hand, fighting him off. When people say, well, I carry an empty chamber. That way I can rack the slide. And I'll say, really? Okay. Give me your left hand if you're right-handed. Now draw and rack that slide. And I know that there are ways to do it, but not while I'm dancing you around the room and slinging you all over the place.
Oh, exactly. You're right on the money. It's a terrible idea to carry an empty chamber. I did a class one time for the Israeli Defense Forces, mm-hmm. and those guys were famous for carrying, empty chambers. Right. And a lot of it was due to how they trained their military and all that kind of stuff. But it took me an entire, I would say, day to a day and a half to make them realize at the distances that most pistol confrontations happen that it would be, I'm not going to say impossible, but it would be extremely problematic for them to rack the slide before they take their shot.
Interesting. Okay, another question. We're just bouncing around now. I have made the switch, and I mean, I go way back, 1911s and everything else. Love my single stacks, everything else. But I have definitely made the switch to having more ammo, having watched a lot of videos of multiple attackers. Is that reasonable, or am I being unnecessarily paranoid with that?
Well, I think that, let me back up. We, as a training community, especially those that are students, are very cavalier about certain manipulations. When you see these folks reload or clear a stoppage while they're on the training range, they just kind of go through the motions and all that kind of stuff. And they really don't comprehend that in a gunfight, while you're trying to do that tap rack or you're trying to do that magazine exchange, there's someone going to be shooting at you while you're trying to do that. So if you truly comprehend that, and that's one of the great things about interactive training, the airsoft or simunitions, you find out really quickly that it's not a lackadaisical action to do a reload or a stoppage clearance. It's something you want to do quickly and efficiently. But if you don't have to do that type of manipulation because you have more ammo, I think that's to your advantage. But only have more ammo if the gun itself fits you well.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. If it's a great big thing and you can't get your hand around the grip, then that doesn't really work.
Then it doesn't point well for you. Yeah, well, and everybody wants the gun to point well.
When we started doing our first-person defender series and we're doing force-on-force, what we found was that universally, to your point about having more ammo or you don't want to be reloading in the middle of this, almost to the last person, when it really got ugly and they're being attacked and they're having to start shooting with sim gun or airsoft or whatever it is, they would run the gun dry. I mean, because these guns all had like 6 to 8 shots. I mean, it just almost always, they are an empty gun at that point. You're going, wow. And they never occurred to them that they would shoot that many rounds that fast. But when the guy's coming at you with a knife, it's amazing how quickly you can shoot him.
Oh, yeah. So that's why I don't worry too much about go fast. You'll probably be plenty fast when the situation happens. I would rather you be more deliberate and hit what you're shooting at.
Oh, it's a great point. You're flinging bullets out there. We're not the bad guys where we don't care where the bullets go. We're responsible for every single one of them. We don't want to hurt other people. That's kind of the definition of being the good guy in the whole deal. One of the things I've seen from really highly trained people, Dave, throw this at you, is people who could shoot very quickly, draw, shoot, bang, bang. But then when they had to, for instance, make a headshot, or if it's a longer shot, it was a very fast draw, come up and then take a breath, let it out, press the trigger, and make the deliberate shot that they know they have to make.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot. And I think that's a byproduct of people being more concerned about the readout on the timer than what happened on the target. And then add into that the dynamic of the threat may be moving, or the shooter may be moving, or they both may be moving. And it goes sideways. But when it comes to time, the time that needs to be reduced is not our draw speed or our reload speed. The time that needs to be reduced is the time it takes us to see, identify, and react to the threat, the lag time.
The awareness
factor. If you've
factor.
got 5-6 second lag time, a 1 second draw isn't going to help you.
But if you can see it and understand it earlier, it's basically that's reaching out further with your inboard radar, if you will, and see what's going on. It may give you time to even get the heck out of Dodge before you get there. Dave Spaulding, I got to run here, man, but we could do this for hours. Well, we have done it for hours, as a matter of fact. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Listen, you take care. I appreciate you sharing that vast experience that you have.